Hey guys, so in the previous video we went over the basic concept behind objects in Java. So today we're going to learn how to actually create them. So over here on the left in your Package Explorer, go ahead and right click and make a new Java project. And we're going to name this Java Objects since that's what we're learning about. Once the project is created, go ahead and right click on it and make a new package. And let's call this one Objects. Now inside our package, let's make our first class. And today we're going to talk about dogs. So we're going to make a dog class. Now remember that classes in Java are blueprints of objects. So we can create multiple instances of this class, which would be called objects. So we can create multiple dog objects. But first, we have to populate our class with information about the dog. And in our class, in our blueprint, there can be two things that we can have. The first are attributes, as in things that describe our class. So for a dog, these could be things like the breed, or their age, or their size, etc. And then the second thing we would have in our class is things that the class can do. So for example, a dog can bark or a dog can eat, right? These are things that the class can do, so we have to write those. Today we're going to learn about exactly that, how to make our class do things. And the way we do this in Java is with methods. So let's go over the syntax for actually writing your own methods. And the first thing you have to do is specify the modifier. And the modifier can be either public or private. What this means is it's the visibility of the method. Who can access this method? If we make it public, that means that someone else in some other class can potentially create an instance of your class, in this case the dog, and then call the method. But if we make it private, that means it's only accessible within the class. In this case, let's make a public method. Now the second thing that we have to specify is the return type. Let's say we were writing a method that was adding up two numbers. Then in that case, that would be returning an integer value. It would be returning the sum of the two numbers that were specified. Now, if you don't have a return type, if your method isn't going to be returning anything specific, then we can just write void. Alright, now we have to name our method. So let's make a simple method called bark. Now inside the parentheses, you can put potential parameters or arguments. Going back to the whole adding numbers method example, if you wanted to add two numbers, then the user would have to give you the two numbers that they want to add. So that's where this would go. We'll go over the more specifics of arguments in a little bit. But for now, let's have this method just simply print out woof. So we have a basic method in our class dog. So now let's create an instance of our dog and call the method. So we're going to make a new class in object and we're going to call it main. And we want it to have the public static void main string args method stub. Now we're going to go over in specifics why this method is so important and special, but for now let's focus on creating an instance of our dog. So we have our class, but we haven't made an instance of it. We haven't made the dog object yet. So here's how we do this. The first thing you have to do is specify the type. What object are you making? So we're making a dog. And typically this will be the class name itself. Alright, so now that we're creating an actual dog, we have to store it in a variable. So we give the variable a name. So let's say dog1. And in this case, since we're making an object, we have to use the new keyword. And then we again type the class name, this time with parentheses. And we'll go over why parentheses in a separate video. Okay, so now we've actually created an object, a dog object. So let's call the method. In order to call a method in another class, we use something called dot notation. What we do is we take our variable name and we put a dot. And basically that means now whatever is public, if we have a public variable or a public method, we can access it. So in this case, you see that bark pops up. So we want to call bark. And now when we run this, we'll see that woof is printed out. because that's what the bark method does. It just prints out woof. Okay, let's write another method in our dog class. We're going to make it public again so that we can call it from the main class. And how about we have a method that would take a human years, or the human age of a dog in human years, and convert it to dog years. So in this case, we want to return what the dog's age is in dog years. So the return type would have to be int. So we type int instead of void. And now we give the method a name. So let's say human to dog years. And in this case, we want to have a parameter because the user is going to pass in an argument, which is how old their dog is in normal human years. So in order to do that, we basically create a variable inside the parentheses. So let's say it's human years. So what would happen here is that the user would put inside the parentheses when they're calling the method how old their dog is in human years. So let's say they're 3 or 4 years old. And that number gets stored inside this variable human years so that we can actually do stuff with it. Alright, so we're going to use the simple conversion of a dog year is 7 times the human years. So we want to return that value. We want to return how old our dog is in dog years. So for that, we use the return keyword. And if you have a return type here, if it's anything other than void, then you have to have a return statement. Otherwise, you'll have an error as we see here. So we want to return the human years that the person passes in times 7. Cool, so now we have this basic method, so we can come back to our main class, and now we could do dog1 dot, let's say, human to dog years. And let's say my dog is 4 years old. Now, this expression right here is going to return a value. So this is equivalent to, in this case, 4 times 7, which is 28. So we can either store this value in another variable, and then we could print out the variable. Alternatively, if you know that all you're going to do is print out the value that's returned by this method, then we could just simply have a print statement and just put in dog1 dot human to dog years directly. And we'll see that when we run it, 28 is printed out both times. Cool, so we just learned the basics of how to create a method, how to actually call the method, and how to create instances of a class. In the next video, we'll be going over how to populate a class with attributes. I'll see you guys in the next video.